The Human Optimization Podcast is proudly brought to you by Vicon Supplements, where quality meets sustainability. Vicon's all-natural supplements are handcrafted and sustainably produced in Canada, bringing you products that nourish both your well-being and our planet. Visit viconsupplements.com today and be a part of a greener, healthier future.
Are you ready to embark on a journey to the best version of you? Join me, Lisa Pitel-Killah, as I dive deep into the world of hair tissue mineral analysis and functional medicine with fellow experts, and guide you on the path of unlocking your full potential. As a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, I'm on a mission to reach high-performance professionals from around the world to help you minimize tiring symptoms, maximize health, and gain unstoppable energy. This is the Human Optimization Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. As you know, I am Lisa Pitel-Killah, your host, and I have here with me today Kayse Gehret. And I can't wait to dive into everything that we're going to talk about today. And I think you're going to be fascinated. And then stay tuned because we have a great deal for you at the end as well. So don't stop listening or watching. Kayse, I want to give a little background to people because you really are a pioneer in the transformational wellness, right? Nearly 30 years of experience guiding deep soulful change. You're the founder of Microdosing for Healing. You've supported thousands of people across 30 different countries on earth-based practices, and we're going to dive into those today. And I know that, well, you just launched and lead a professional training program. So we're going to touch on that too, which is super exciting. And I also know that you had your own chronic illness that brought you to today, right? I feel like so many of us in the health space are here because of trying to heal ourselves. And in the midst of it, we find these things and we're like, oh my gosh, I have to tell the world about this because I finally feel like myself again. So first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Excellent. And now, like I said, I always love people. Give us a little background on that journey that really brought you into this space and manifested what you do today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of your listeners, probably, I was a pretty sensitive little kid, very empathetic and loved animals, loved nature. And I developed a grand mal seizure disorder when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And I always had a hunch, I did all the testing. I was tested for epilepsy, tumors, spinal taps, all the things, and they never found a biological cause for it. But nonetheless, I was medicated with Western medicine, pharmaceuticals that had a lot of side effects that continued on through most of my 20s. And when I decided to try earth medicines, which are psychedelic medicines, and come off of my Western pharmaceutical medications, my doctors were not in favor of this,
course.
at all at the time. And, I didn't do it with the intention of healing my seizures at all. At the time, I had studied and worked in the healing arts for then many, many years. And I came across the idea of microdosing, which I had never heard of. I had certainly, I went to school in Santa Cruz. I'd certainly been exposed to psychedelics, but I never used any drug because of my seizures. I was kind of scared of destabilizing my already destabilized brain, right?
Yep.
But when I came across the idea of microdosing, which is taking subperceptual, teeny tiny doses of mushrooms that would not alter me in any way. I wouldn't go anywhere. I would stay right here in the earth realm. It was more like a supplement, so I thought. And I started microdosing, and after a few months, I realized my seizures had stopped. And I hadn't had an aura, and I had a whole lot of other benefits coming in, from clarity of mind to nature connection to creativity and intuition. But it was pretty remarkable to notice that my seizures had stopped, and I have not had a seizure since that time.
Wow.
So that's what really kind of caught my attention in a significant way, and led me to explore more in this practice and come to specialize in this work.
Amazing. So let's dive into a little bit because people are like, well, I feel like there's going to be people watching or listening that what's microdosing? What does that mean? Right. And I know, and we're going to talk about growing some of the stuff at home. There's so many things that you can do, but let's tell people what it is first so that they can really have a good understanding of what this conversation is really about.
Thanks. I appreciate it now because people are starting to hear the term more.
Yeah.
A few years ago, it was kind of a novel term,
Hmm.
and it meant taking a small dose of psychedelics, typically
Hmm.
psilocybin mushrooms or LSD,
Hmm.
typically. But now the term microdosing is being used for all kinds of things, or
Right.
Ozempic, all kinds of things. And
Yes.
so it's a good moment to kind of clarify this practice that it's microdosing. Yeah, we work specifically with earth medicines, with mushrooms, and microdosing is really taking typically 1/10 of what a ceremonial or high dose
Mm.
journey mushroom would be.
Okay.
It's sub-perceptual, it's sub-threshold, so you will feel benefits, gifts, different health,
Hmm.
gifts, but you won't be altered in any way.
Right. Well, and one of the things that you talk about is people with trauma, right? A lot of times by doing some of the microdosing, you can actually get to the root of some of these things that we really don't want to deal with from an emotional perspective. And you also mix them. So let's start off with the first part, and then I want to talk about mixing it with some other modalities.
Yes, it's a great point because we're so steeped in the culture of antidepressants and
Hmm.
pharmaceutical medications that oftentimes people think mushrooms and microdosing is going to be like a pharmaceutical experience. It is in many ways the opposite.
Yep. Hmm.
So, microdosing mushrooms actually gets underneath the symptom and goes to the root of why you might go on the drug in the first place, rather than kind of suppressing and holding down, numbing, masking the symptom, holding it at bay. It
Hmm.
actually brings it up to the surface for clearing, for healing. So you're actually achieving lasting healing. I think that's the biggest thing that people are kind of blown away with is you don't microdose to keep microdosing. You microdose for as long as you need to. You reach a
Yep.
new set point and you just come back to microdosing when you go on to work on something now. So for example, I will go many months now without microdosing. I never worry that my seizures are going to come back.
Hmm. That's amazing. Amazing. And you also kind of pair these with energy alignment, spiritual work, Reiki, right? So touch on that and how that can contribute to that transformation too, because I think that's a really important part.
Hmm. So mushrooms are a non-specific amplifier, we call them. They're kind of a catalyst, an amplifier for everything we do. So think about every health modality there is, it just amplifies and enhances that. So anything you're
Mhm.
doing from breath work to qigong to sports, athletic performance to coaching, lifestyle change, it's all accentuates and amplifies what you're already doing. That's why it's best to not microdose solo as you would a
Mm,
pill. It's kind of best in the hands and in the nest of like some other practices that you're doing simultaneously. It's kind of designed that way. When you think about nature and mushrooms in the forest, they
mhm,
are the interdependent, they are the connector, bringing the forest, connecting the whole forest together. And that's kind of their role for us as well, I think.
mhm. Makes total sense. Well, and I think it's again, when I feel like the anxiety piece, right? And then we're talking about emotions and trauma, but that anxiety piece today, especially after the last, 5, 6 years, right? We've seen that explode. And so many more people are now on anxiety medications. And that's kind of the first step. And you're right about symptoms, right? Symptoms, in my opinion, are a gift. It's the body speaking to us, telling us that something is wrong. So rather than crushing that symptom and shutting the body's voice off, we need to listen more. And I think that that's what we're trying to talk about here. Like this enhances that so that the body is allowed to speak. We just have to be paying attention.
Absolutely. Yes. And part of the magic of the medicine is It speaks and communicates to people so individually in a way that's designed specifically for them. Just like our
Mm,
symptoms, our body shows symptoms very specifically that often gives us clues
yep.
as to what's going on. Is it in our skin? Is it in our hair? Is it in our eyes? Is it in our legs? Like all of these things are clues and very intentional. And so nature's medicine is very, very similar. Like some people are very mental people.
Hmm.
So they'll start microdosing. They notice their mind is brighter and sharper, more clear
Ah.
and focused. Some people are very physical and somatically oriented. They'll notice shifts and changes in their energy. Other people
Mm,
are very spiritually inclined. They'll
mhm.
notice connections happening, their dream life pops open,
Yep.
have beautiful animal encounters. So it's really fascinating that people can be working with the same exact harvest of mushrooms, and they'll
Yep.
all have completely different gifts come through.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And tell me too, because I'm interested, just with regards to different phases of life and using microdosing, right? Especially for women. I'm in menopause, like right now, right? I'm at the end of that perimenopause phase, right? And I know that there's some differences there too. Speak a little on that, just so that we have a bit of background.
Definitely happy to. So our community, we've supported people from 19 to
Mhm.
91. And there is a great range in experience. So we've noticed that people who are older, um, tend to sometimes need a little bit higher dose, and it makes
Mm,
sense because our minds are kind of, we have our ways.
mhm.
We have our conditioned ways. Our brains are a little older,
Yep.
but we have seen remarkable benefits in elderly people who, yeah, their cognitive function that was once declining come back, their memory comes back, their ability
Wow.
to change happens.
Yep.
With younger people, your mind's already very bendy, right? You
Right.
don't
Yep.
necessarily need to be more flexible. What it does with younger people, it helps you decondition what is everybody else's and what is my actual soul telling me to do,
Right.
which I think is
Right.
really valuable for younger people. Perimenopause, menopause, we joke. I have a lot of people I work with that are in this phase of life, and we joke like perimenopause and menopause are like a mushroom journey in themselves.
Right?
I
I
mean, it's
100% agree. 100%.
You never know what you're gonna get.
Yep.
What's around the corner, every day is a
Mhm,
little bit different. This kind of takes you through it, but I love working with women in this phase of life because during perimenopause, everything that we have not yet dealt with
mhm.
comes up and it comes out on the table, ready or not. And so all the old stuff that's unresolved, it comes up. So it's a beautiful time to work with the medicine because it just amplifies and enhances that anyway.
Yep.
Also, a lot of women, I find it's a beautiful time because you get back in touch with your body
Mm,
in such a way that your body often will lead you to the thing you need to get back
mhm,
in balance. So some women experience perimenopause again mentally,
mhm,
sexually, physically. It's all different. Sleep for different women, and so the
mhm.
mushrooms help you get back in touch with what you need to kind of rebalance yourself for whatever symptoms you might be having.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting when you say, all that stuff that's been it's kinda sitting there, now it comes back, and I think it's because we're at a point where we're just like, let this stuff go. You know? We thought it was so important a decade ago, and it's not important anymore, right? So I find that so funny because I've definitely gone through that myself, right? In just that transitional phase over a period of time, of course, but it's definitely noticeable. I noticed that for sure. Um, let's talk about so what about with sports? I'm really intrigued how like the body we're here, we're talking about human optimization. How do we optimize our bodies, our human to function better, to perform better? How does that part work into things?
Love it. So, one of the favorite things and common things I hear from people that I work with that are very high performers, professional athletes, and
Mhm.
they often after a few months they're like, "Why is everybody not doing this?" Like And then they go, "I'm glad they're not."
Right?
I'm glad they're not. Let's keep it a secret a while longer.
Mhm.
Because it does. It's so interesting. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is people think with microdosing or with mushrooms specifically, they're going to be like stoned or they're going
Right,
to be
right.
out of it and it's going to take them off their game. But after you start microdosing, you're like, wow, I'm not only not off my game, I'm kind of more on my game than I have
Mm,
ever been. And people who were initially reluctant to kind of dose on the day they had a big performance or a big
yep.
speech or something to do, they actually coordinate their dosing with those big events because you are more dialed in, your
Yep.
reflexes are better, you are just kind of heightened at all things. And so, from a performance standpoint, it's like, yeah, you're just super powered up. And so, when you think
Wow.
about right now, it's critical thinking, judgment,
Mhm,
decisions, all the things that you have to do in kind of a nanosecond when you're an
mhm.
athlete, right? It just makes you sharper and clearer and better and more gifted at what you're already gifted at.
Wow, that's amazing. Amazing. And what about its impact on recovery? That's always a big part of, right, of that output. How does it affect that?
Mm.
Is there a beneficial effect at the end of that event?
There's an anti-inflammatory component to mushrooms specifically that are
Mhm.
very healing. So we've seen in a lot of people who have recovery from fatigue,
Mm.
higher energy levels. And again, it works synchronistically with a lot of other things. So not surprisingly, the things that when I work with performance athletes and people, it's the simplest things combined with mushrooms that can make the biggest difference, like lenses and light. That like your glasses, right? Sunlight, getting morning sun
Mhm.
on your eyes, like really getting your mitochondria activated. And I
Yep.
think mushrooms just remediate us kind of like they remediate nature. It's clearing what we don't need, clearing density and energetic densities we don't need. And we're
Mhm.
just kind of operating on a higher frequency altogether. And so that in and of itself, I think contributes to recovery, performance recovery, and also sleep. So a lot of people,
Mm.
particularly men, which has been
Yeah.
interesting, find when they start microdosing, they're like, I'm sleeping and I'm dreaming for the
Oh,
first time in years.
that's
Women
so
too, but it
interesting.
tends to be, you know, people who are extremely type A
Yeah.
and really have a hard time really getting into those deeper layers of sleep are for the first time because their nervous system gets reset. They
Yep.
can sleep more deeply and they start to feel so much better and recover better from things. And it's like a domino effect of leading back to it's just basically they reset their nervous system at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. Interesting though, the differences between men and women. And I
Mhm.
mean, we see that in so many other modalities too, right? Where their bodies just react differently. I mean, we're just different. So, not surprised by that. Let's talk about the types of mushrooms. And then you also share a little bit about how you can grow them at home, which I thought was
Yes.
super interesting. But let's start with the first one.
Yes, yes. So I have always worked with psilocybin mushrooms.
Okay.
Since I started, we were founded in 2020. It was kind of the height of the pandemic, and
Hmm.
psilocybin mushrooms are pretty easy to grow once you get the hang of it. So
Oh,
it was great.
okay.
People had a lot of time. It's when
Of
everybody was
course.
baking sourdough bread and things, right? And once you get the hang of it, they're very prolific and lots of people were sharing, spouses were microdosing, families, siblings were microdosing together. Um, Different mushrooms have different qualities. So another
Mhm.
mushroom we especially lately have been
Mm.
introducing more into our programs is Amanita muscaria,
Oh,
which is the
okay.
Alice in Wonderland mushroom, which is
Mhm.
the cute little red one with the little white dots on it.
Yep.
Um, that mushroom is very different. It works with the GABA
Mhm.
receptors
Mhm.
and it too affects the nervous system, but it's really beautiful for people who have a very heightened level of anxiety
Mm.
and overwhelm, which due to world events right now,
Yep.
a lot of people are experiencing. So when people come to us first with practice now and they're experiencing that, they say they're a 9 out of 10 on the anxiety meter. We
Yep.
might start now with Amanita first and
Mm,
get them at a level and then start practicing with psilocybin after.
got it. Got it.
Within the psilocybin family, there's lots and lots of different strains.
Hmm.
So there's golden teacher, there's PE, there's albino, there's many, many, many different strains. And so a lot of people, once they start practicing microdosing, they really find it fun to cultivate different types of mushrooms for
Hmm.
depending on what they're looking for. Is it for performance enhancement? Is it for mental? Is it for depression? And
Right.
experiment with different types of mushrooms. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And I know one of the best times, and I think you share this, best times is to kind of take, because some people get a lot of energy from mushrooms too, right? So taking them in the morning if you're doing this practice and things like that might be a good idea.
Yes, definitely. One of my favorite mushrooms to stack with. So, stacking is taking different mushrooms,
Hmm.
typically, or different herbs, and then stacking them with your psilocybin
Hmm.
mushrooms
Hmm.
for specific reasons. Like, I credit healing my seizures with psilocybin and lion's mane mushrooms.
Ah,
I love
yes.
that stack. Lion's mane on its own is beautiful, but it
Hmm.
just is beautiful in combination. And so anytime people have nervous system disruptions, seizures, concussions, recovery from
Yeah.
car accidents, TBI, I love lion's mane for energy, and for athletes, I love cordyceps.
I was
So
just gonna
pairing
say, yep.
cordyceps and
Yeah.
in microdosing stacking is really, really beautiful. And some people practice, I would say most people practice during the morning hours to that
Hmm.
point. They love the uplift and energy. It's kind of a calm, uplifted energy. The people who tend to practice at night tend to be doing it more for stream exploration,
Mm,
spiritual
okay.
development,
Yep.
because they really enjoy it, really lights up their dream life.
Amazing, amazing. Well, and there are, I mean, there are a number of other mushrooms out there too, right? Outside of just even, talking about um, psilocybin, but also mentioning cordyceps, mentioning lion's mane. There's reishi, another one that came into my world from another colleague a little while back. I was actually doing some research on cancer, and it was wild siaka. That was right. So that's the first time I'd heard of that one, and I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." Okay, so what so I think this is it. This is like the ancient wisdom coming back, right? It goes the ebbs and flows of popularity and not, and I think that's why now that microdosing is such a buzzword. Yeah,
Well, that kingdom has lived through 5 extinction events. So
right.
it does know something, right?
100%. And
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like sometimes we don't pay attention enough either, right?
Mhm.
That ancient wisdom is here to stay. And that's why we keep coming back around to it because it has a story to tell us. Yeah, absolutely. And so tell me with regards to practice. So in your practice, how these things kind of come into fruition and why how people can use obviously microdosing to support what they're looking for.
Beautiful. So I have been working with this with a 6-week framework since
Mm.
2020. So we do
Hmm.
6-week immersions, we call them, and it's a small group experience. We just finished our 30th cohort of them.
Oh,
And it's a beautiful experience to do with someone else. So it can be a community, it can also be a coach, it can be your healing artist who has familiarity with microdosing, it could be a small group. But microdosing, mushrooms are so relational. That's their
yes.
function. They connect things. They connect you to yourself, they connect you to others, they connect you to the world. And so it's really best served, and it's a remarkably different experience when you do it in community in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
It's also so subtle, but so powerful in the way it works that oftentimes when you're doing it on your own, you don't really notice as much until you speak it out or it gets
Right.
reflected back to you. Like so many people we have start microdosing and they'll go, I don't really notice that much different, but their kids go, Dad, you're completely different. Like
Oh, that's so
you're so
interesting.
different. Or your
Yep.
pets start to respond differently to you.
Hmm.
A lot of people's pets behave differently once they start practicing. Animals start coming to them. So it takes things happening in life for them to go, wow, I would have really responded to that very differently a few weeks
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I find it so interesting that you talk about animals and the response there, because animals are they're so attached to the innate being, right? Just the world. I mean, I have dogs at home and they know my husband's coming home half an hour before he gets there, right? So, and so what about like we're talking about animals recognizing that their owner is being different, right? That they're reflecting themselves differently. What about for animals?
Yes. Beautiful question. I love this. I mean, animals already possess the instinct and the sensitivity that we have too. I mean,
Hmm.
we are two animals. It's just we've become so domesticated,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
In the muggle world, that we've lost that. And so when people start to awaken to those gifts again, and their instinct, it's like, wow, I knew that what that person was going to say before they said it, or I knew something was
Oh.
coming. um I knew what they were thinking, I knew what this person was feeling. Those are your instincts lighting back up again, and it's very, very cool when it happens. And people are like, is this the mushrooms doing this? And it's like, yes. It's like sometimes when you one way I shared people notice microdosing is working
Mhm.
is all of a sudden your life, you look at your life a few weeks back and you're like, wow, my life has been really frictionless. Because when you
Oh,
live from a
interesting.
place of instinct and intuition, you just know when to move, when to
Yep.
stay, when to go, and you just move through the world very differently. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I'll be walking my dog and he just wants to go a certain way. And I'm like, why is that? And we'll go that way. And then I'm like, oh, that's why. He's just like a few steps ahead of me because his instincts are just dialed up all the way.
Yep.
So they too sense that in us. So a lot of people notice that kind of the most sensitive beings on the planet, which are animals,
Mhm.
babies often, like when you're in
You're right.
kids, they'll see like, have you ever been in a place and like a baby will just fixate on you
Yep.
and almost like look through you?
Yep.
People notice that happening. And interestingly, another one we've noticed is autistic.
Oh.
Sometimes children who are on the spectrum,
Mhm.
um, people think sometimes being on the spectrum, people are they're lacking a sensitivity, but it's actually quite the opposite. They're highly, highly attuned
Yep.
beings. And one of the beautiful ways I knew, I was probably microdosing for probably 3 or 4 months, and I was hiking one day with a father and son, and the son was clearly, I could tell from him that he was gate, and as we got closer, he was on the spectrum. And when we went to cross on this little footbridge, he paused and he just hugged me. He just embraced
Wow.
me and clasped
Yep.
me, and over his shoulder, I just kind of was taken aback, but then hugged him back. And over his shoulder, I saw his father, and his father said, "He hasn't let anyone touch him in years."
Wow.
And I was like, that's the medicine.
Yep. Wow, that's incredible. What a story. Wow. And yeah, so interesting because you're so right, right? They're just very heightened beings and so sensitive, which is why some of the actions come up that they end up portraying, right? And showing it out to us, right? So that's wow, what a heartwarming story.
Mm.
Hmm. Um, if somebody was going to get started on this journey, what would be the first thing you'd share with them? Is there any one thing
Mm.
that you would share?
I love to really go pretty deep with people that are
Mhm.
just starting practice. You know,
Okay.
when people are in my community, it's a nice way to just come onto a call. To a lot
Mhm.
of people just like to listen to other people's experience at
Of
first.
course.
It's really reassuring, and a lot of people are new and stepping into this. I mean, I remember when I was starting like psychedelics, like me? No, no. So I get a lot
What
of
is
people that
it?
are like that. They're like, I can't believe I'm
Yeah.
doing this. And so it's just an opportunity to kind of know and be known, and
Mhm.
kind of get used to, and also kind of take a totality and a 360 of your whole life.
Mm.
You know, where are you mentally, but also spiritually,
Yep.
and also physically? Like all these things are connected, and mushrooms are going to show you those connections in a short amount of time. So it's
Yep.
good to kind of look at all of those areas of life. Also somebody's level of resourcing. You know,
Mhm.
I think because people are really, it's a challenging time.
Mhm.
here in
Yeah.
Earthville, here in Earthville. And so assessing the level of support people have
Yeah.
to go through growth and change and transformation because we all go through them.
Mhm.
And it's important, like in these portals of growth, which if the mushrooms are calling you, it's usually a sign that you're heading into one.
Heading into that. Yep.
Yes. So it's good to assess and have like a team, a community, a support, a coach, a guide beside you. And
Yeah.
so those are the things like the foundations that I love to have people have as they're stepping into practice for the first time.
Amazing. Well, and you talked about the having a community you're doing it with because it's important because those people then see the changes that we might not feel or see in ourselves, right? So that's I think a really important part too. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk about your community a little bit. Just how does it work and how can people join? We have a code we're going to give you at the end, but let's talk just a little bit deeper about the community itself.
Yeah, I'm so proud of them. So I'm happy to talk about them always, always. So our community started after we did our first 6-week program in back in 2020.
Hmm.
They didn't want to stop. And so
That's how
it
all
originally
great communities start. It's true. It's so true.
they were missing each other. And so we just started doing it kind of casually. It was kind of an alumni thing for a while.
Hmm.
Then it got to be enough people. And then thanks to the growth of the field, the awareness of the field, when I first started, it was very hard to find mushrooms and sourcing
Hmm.
without growing your own. But
Right.
now there's people that are cultivating and providing medicine through religious protections
Hmm.
and have website for sourcing that we are able to collaborate with to provide medicine access to
Nice.
people.
Yeah.
It is still illegal, unfortunately, in most of the country.
Mm.
So
Okay.
it depends on where you are. It's very mycelial and organic and, you know,
Hmm.
grassroots, how it's growing. There's decriminalization efforts, but still to this day, like it, depending on where you are,
Yeah.
there's different legal considerations. So each person kind of has to weigh out for my own personal use, for my own religious sacramental use, is is that worth the risk of me
Of
doing
course.
this?
Hmm.
And most people, certainly for myself, it was
Hmm.
to have the healing access we have. So people access medicines depending on what country they're in. So we
Hmm.
have different medicine makers in each one. And then we come together usually 2 or 3 times a month. Some
Hmm.
are open coaching calls where people just come and share and ask questions about their experience. We always have people who are brand new to practice on every call. And
Yeah.
then we have people who've been practicing for 4 or 5 years now.
Amazing.
So it's fun for the new people to see what's possible, for people
Absolutely.
that are kind of older at it, the senior people in the group to like look back. But also, it's great for the people who've been practicing for some time to kind of always stay in touch with that beginner mind and
Yeah.
starting over again because we're always all starting over again in some
Hmm.
ways.
Well, and sometimes we forget how we felt back then, right? When we first started something, because it was so long ago. We're like, I don't even remember what that feels like. Well, and the other thing that I like is that you have kind of the suppliers there to vet, right? That's a really important part, especially in our I'm talking about the health industry, whether we talk about earth medicine, it's still just as important. Making sure you're getting a good quality product that, is going to be promoting all those health benefits that people are looking for, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're working with mushrooms that are so, I always tell people like spirit sees all, right? It and
Mm-hmm.
it sees it sees everything you've ever done toward your health and your growth. A lot of
Yeah.
people go, I've tried everything. I've done every pharmaceutical, every program, every training, and I started microdosing, like everything worked for the first time. Like it just kind of brought it
Yeah.
together.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I feel like the mushrooms are really sensitive to how they're held.
Mm.
So it's kind of like the difference between getting strawberries from your farmer's market, from a farmer
Yeah.
that has cared for them, that held them with
Yeah.
love, versus a factory in a
Mm-hmm.
distant country, right? Right? It's just a completely different
Absolutely.
imprint. And
Yep.
so that's how we hold the medicine as well.
Yeah.
We know everybody that we work with and collaborate with. And it's a great way to grow in your practice too, from people want to explore other medicines, other guides, step into journey work, higher dose work.
Mhm.
You'll meet people within the community that you
That's
trust.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, and I want to dive into one more piece because now you have a course for coaches and practitioners, right, to advance and be able to support others on this journey too. Talk a little bit about that.
I'm so excited for this. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, what we noticed was we had so many people, we were developing so many guides, microdosing coaches and
Mm,
guides accidentally.
mhm.
Without, so people would often take our 6-week immersion and partway through the program, they're like, I just think I want to do this like in my
Yep.
professional life. And
Mhm.
they would just start supporting their community and their clients. It would just very naturally happened.
Yep.
And it's to the point now where there's so much curiosity, interest, and frankly, need right
Mhm.
now that it's being formalized as a field. And so it was a perfect time to create a facilitator training program
Yep.
that's grounded in kind of everything that I've learned after supporting so many people through this
Mhm.
point, because it's a practice that it's so intimate, it's so personal, it tends to be unique to people that it's really pattern recognition,
Yep.
right? And kind of recognizing how people move through the process, recognizing, connecting dots to health conditions and how
Mhm.
the medicine is speaking to you. And so it really does take a lot of like intentional apprenticeship
Mhm.
and working with people. So, creating a professional training program that incorporates that learning and learning the skills of how to support people, but also the real time doing it with participants in our community so that you can see what it's really like to support people in this practice in the real
Yeah.
world.
That's amazing. And what does that look like for them from a structure perspective? Like, is it a number of training weeks and then they do kind of hands-on? What does that look like?
It's a 12-week program.
Okay.
Yep, it's 3 months, and so I teach and am with you throughout, many of the classes, but I have 7 teachers, other guides that I love and collaborate with often that are
Amazing.
internationally based with their
Nice.
own deep expertise in their area of practice that are very
Mhm.
relevant to what you're gonna face when supporting people. The first one starts this summer. We'll probably run another cohort this fall.
Nice.
And as part of it, you support people in a 6-week practice.
Oh,
So
nice.
you'll get
Okay.
practice, yes, literally supporting 2 people in a coaching practice along the way so that by the
Amazing.
time you graduate, you'll be ready to go and support people out in the world.
Oh, that's so amazing. All right. So follow Casey. So I've got some links here. We have Instagram. It's Kayse.Gehret. That's Gehret. And we'll have these links in the description as well. And then also on YouTube at Microdosing for Healing. And website, we'll share that too. That's where you can find working with Casey, your community, and then also your new coaching program.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much. And we have a
Amazing.
special offer for all of your
We
community and your
do.
listeners.
Do you want
Yes.
to share it?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So the codes we in our community program, we have it's a set up a monthly option for people who want to pop in and just check it out month to month. Other people who are a little bit more established and want to join for a year and get a couple months off free. All of you can use the code Optimize 15 to get 15% off of either ongoing.
Amazing, amazing. So take advantage of this. If, I feel like, the reason I even started this podcast was to have one person resonate with something and find something to take their health in a direction that was where they needed to go. So I always say if one person resonates and if you're resonating with this, which I mean, again, going back to what some of the athletes are saying, it's like, why isn't everybody doing this? Then you're gonna wanna take advantage of that and use that code Optimize15 to, join the community and check it out with Casey. So, Casey, thank you so much for being here today. This was great, and I'm definitely gonna be doing a deep dive, right, into some, microdosing and healing. I think there's some amazing things that you have brought to the table here and are pioneering as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. All right. So Thanks for listening. If you're on your favorite podcast host, make sure you give this episode a like. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. We're here every 2 weeks with a brand new episode. And make sure you subscribe to my channel. And I will see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on the Human Optimization Podcast. Episode technical production is by Grace Sylvester and guest booking by Stu Tate. Want to learn more? Visit Pitel-Killah.com for incredible free resources to supercharge your journey to becoming the best version of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the Human Optimization Podcast and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah.